Okay, so thank you everyone for showing up tonight at Sustainable Claremont's Dialogue series. We're so happy to have you all on this rainy Monday, Martin Luther King Day. And tonight we have a really interesting, sort of exciting program that's really aiming at building electrification and greater equity in the communities that really need it most. So really exciting one that we've all been looking forward to and been planning for several months now. Before we get into the dialogue, a couple really brief announcements, and my colleague Han is going to be dropping some links into the chat box. First is that we have another dialogue coming up next Monday on the Claremont Hills Wilderness Park. So same link that you used to get to this talk tonight will work for next Monday. Also, if you can sign up for our newsletter, that's the best way to keep on top of all of these events that we're having. We're also going to be having a tree planting event in Pomona this coming Saturday. So we're still looking for volunteer tree planters, and we're looking for more tree stewards. And we're going to be having a tree steward workshop in 2 weeks. So again, both of those, please sign up. We're going to drop those links in the chat box. And as always, sign up for the newsletter. To help make these types of dialogues possible, we are also always soliciting donations. So if you find these to be valuable components for the community and for that outreach and education that we so value and is so important for sustainability, please consider becoming a donor and helping us do more of these talks. So before we get into the presentation, a couple of quick things. If you have any questions, please hold those till the end of the presentation, just so we don't interrupt the flow of the conversation. If you do have one that seems timely to the slide or the topic at hand, please feel free to just drop that into the chat box. And then if Josh, you, or Jose happen to see that, you can answer it, in passing, or myself and Han will collect those and we can ask those to you at the end. We typically get through all the questions in this 1 hour that we have allotted for the presentation. We try to be respectful of everyone's time. If we do need to go a couple minutes over, hopefully that's not the case, but if we don't get to all the questions, then we could send those to Josh and Jose and their colleagues and try to get everyone's questions answered. Okay, so let me go ahead and introduce our speakers tonight. So Senior Policy Advisor at Southern California Edison, Josh Torres, and his colleague Jose Buneda, who's SCE's Senior Building Electrification Program Strategist, which is a mouthful. They'll both be presenting on SCE's Building Electrification Application and Program. And also joining us a little bit later will be Ruby Rose Yepes, also from SCE, who will be sort of backup and any questions that we have that maybe Josh or Jose can't speak to, Ruby can chime in. So Josh, Jose, thank you both so much for being here with us. And let me go ahead and Josh, I'm going to throw it to you. So I'm going to make you host. Okay.
You're on mute, Josh.
Perfect. Okay, let me share my screen again real quick. So thank you again for having us. Again, my name is Joshua Torres. I'm the Senior Policy Advisors here, and I'm joined with my colleague, Jose Buendia. And then Ruby Rose Yepes, she is part of our new construction team. So she is familiar with all of our new construction programs. Before we get started, I do want to provide some background on what we're talking about when we say building electrification. So obviously, almost every building in California has electricity. But when we talk about electrification, what we're really focusing on is expanding the use of electricity as a fuel source for appliances. So sometimes people think of this as fuel substitution, because basically we're taking appliances that have traditionally been fueled with natural gas or other fossil fuels. We do have some communities in Southern California that still use propane or even wood, and converting those appliances over to electricity, which we can then power with carbon-free electricity like renewables and hydroelectricity. Many people have a lot of predispositions to electric appliances, typically based on, older technologies that were popular from like the 1950s through like the 1970s. Fortunately, today we have a newer generation of electric appliances enabled by super efficient and responsive heat pump technologies. And these perform just as well, if not better, than their natural gas equivalents, and often at a lower cost. Importantly, by switching to these efficient electric technologies, we can then power them with clean energy and help with our environmental goals. Also worth noting, today we won't be talking about cooking. Our focus is on space and water heating for this application. But if you do have questions, we're happy to answer those. We are, we haven't forgotten about them, but our main focus, I'll talk a little bit more about later, is definitely those GHG reductions, which is why we're focused on space and water heating. So why are we concerned about the progress around building electrification, and specifically on the adoption of heat pump technologies? So we did an analysis of how the state is progressing at meeting its GHG reduction goals, specifically looking at 2030. So in 2030, we're supposed to have a 40% GHG reduction across the state. And our analysis found that there is still a significant gap across many sectors of the economy, even with, if we assume all the policies and incentives that have been passed, if we assume those are implemented successfully, there's still going to be a gap. And so we need to kind of press the accelerator a little bit when it comes to decarbonization. And the gap for buildings represents about 1/4 of that gap. So it's a pretty significant contribution. Even after we factor in, recent incentives like the tech and build programs, we're still going to be falling short on our adoption of clean energy alternatives, specifically heat pumps. So when we do a deep dive on buildings and we look at, what appliances are actually, producing those GHGs, consuming that natural gas, space heating and water heating make up about 3/4 of the GHG emissions. And that's why we're so focused on those two appliances, because that's where we get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of climate impact. Heat pumps are super efficient and alternatives to natural gas. Importantly, we can power them with renewable electricity. This application that we have submitted as of December 20th to the Public Utilities Commission is intended to help shrink the adoption gap for heat pump technologies, at least for Southern California. Our customer service team has been working diligently to map out the customer journey. So from, awareness, coming up with the idea of, hey, I need to replace my water heater or I need to replace my furnace, all the way through to the installation and beyond into the operation. And so, we wanted to answer some very important questions. Why aren't customers currently adopting heat pumps? Why aren't they more popular? And what can we do? What can Edison do? What's within our power as a utility to make it easier to encourage customers to switch to these technologies? And so we identified two main barriers: knowledge and upfront costs. And our application is intended to address both of these. And so we're looking to provide financial incentives to help with the cost barriers by offering incentives for both the appliances, as well as, more importantly, for the electrical panel upgrades, the infrastructure. More so on the customer side, there's some money for utility side infrastructure upgrades, but our analysis found the bulk of that money really is needed on the customer side, replacing electrical panels and running new electrical wiring. And then, of course, the appliances themselves. For addressing the knowledge barriers, we're looking to offer home audits for residential customers and technical assistance for commercial customers. And then we're also looking to partner with local CBOs to help conduct education and recruit program applicants. We want this application to offer holistic solutions. So we're not just looking at it in isolation. We're also looking at how it can sync up with other programs and incentives that are available, whether it's other Edison programs or state incentives or federal incentives, and really kind of package that as a sort of one-stop shop for customers that participate. We're also planning to target environmental and social justice, or ESJ, communities. We recognize that these customer groups run the risk of being left behind in the clean energy transition. And so we want to make sure that they have equitable access to decarbonized buildings. Later in the presentation, Jose is going to go into much more depth on what all of these programs will look like. So he's going to talk about the nuts and bolts of those. So what are the benefits of this application? So a major focus is specifically looking at the barriers our most vulnerable customers face. And so again, this is, we have developed a carve out. So we have a specific set aside just for ESJ communities to make sure that, we're targeting them, that there's money that's specifically aimed at bringing those customers along, that the aspects of the program are specifically tailored to the unique barriers that they face. Specifically offering a higher level of incentives, working with CBOs to, specifically target them, provide that extra level of care, so to speak, walking them through the process. We're also trying to send a signal to the larger market, because this is a pilot program. We don't, we can't have this indefinitely. We want there to be longer term benefits. And so we're trying to send a signal to the market that heat pumps are the future. The size and the length of our application will provide some certainty to manufacturers and installers, letting them know that you can go down this path, you can invest in heat pumps, and this is something that the region is transitioning towards. And so we're hoping to use this program to build some economies of scale as well too, by leveraging our market position to help build some of those economies of scale and bring down some costs and encourage installers and contractors to come into this space. Our building electrification also helps the state meet other environmental goals besides climate. So it'll help local air districts achieving attainment, specifically by helping to reduce nitrous oxides and particulates, so helping with ground level air quality. So you sort of have the GHG emissions that are in the higher atmosphere, but then we have this ground level issues, or what people typically think of as smog. And so switching from natural gas appliances to electric appliances doesn't just help with GHGs, it also helps with that local ground level air quality. Full disclosure, specifically when we look at indoor air quality, cooking tends to be the biggest contributor. And we're not focusing on that with this application, with the exception of Catalina Island. There's a special carve out for Catalina that Jose will talk about a little bit more. But for the mainland, we're not specifically focusing on cooking. However, our panel upgrades will be designed to be future-proof, right? So we're not just looking at the heat pumps, we're looking at future electrification. So that could include induction stoves, it could include electric vehicle chargers, it could include solar plus storage. So when we're doing the home energy audits and the panel upgrades, we'll be looking at the future needs of the home, not just the here and now. So in an indirect way, we're preparing the homes for being completely electric, including cooking in the future. There'll also be some consumer savings. So heat pumps are super efficient, which means they use less energy and therefore cost less to operate. Customers who participate will see individual bill savings, and we'll be doing the energy audits to help ensure that, make sure that customers have the full picture of what they're signing up for, making sure that they're realizing those bill savings. But then on a macro level, electrification also helps to lower electricity rates for everybody. So even non-participating customers will see a slight downward pressure on their rates. And this comes from the increase in sales, while basically the increase in sales is larger than the cost of the application. And so when we look at the downward pressure from those increased sales, so more people, or each customer is consuming more electricity, right? Because now they have electric space and water heating, but the investment in the grid is relatively the same. So if your fixed costs stay the same, but your sales go up, your cost per unit goes down. And so in the long run, we think that the downward pressure from the increased sales will be bigger than the upward pressure from the cost of the application. So over the long run, this application will pay for itself and end up putting a slight downward pressure on overall electricity rates. The application will also generate a lot of economic activity, because fundamentally, this is all work that we can't outsource, right? This isn't getting shipped overseas. These are all local contractors, doing work in our homes and our neighbors' homes. And so this will generate a lot of economic activity locally, green jobs. And then of course, fuel switching will lead to GHG reductions, which is our main goal. Today, an all-electric home produces as much as 60% less greenhouse gases than a mixed fuel home. And then, of course, as the grid continues to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner over time, that ratio will only get better. These electric technologies, whether it's electric vehicles or heat pumps, are in this rare situation where they actually get cleaner as they get older, because their fuel source, the grid, is getting cleaner over time. There will also be some small benefits to the grid and overall reliability, because this is a retrofit program and we're replacing older, less efficient HVACs with newer, super efficient heat pump systems. There will be a slight reduction in SCE's summer peak demand. And so this will help reduce concerns over rotating outages in the summer, which is the most critical time of the year for the electric grid. Important to note that the increased demand for electricity due to heating in the winter is pretty negligible. The bigger concern is really the summertime cooling demand from air conditioning. There's plenty of capacity in the winter. And then lastly, there will be a reduction in throughput on the gas system. And so while this application is not enough to close a major facility like Aliso Canyon, we do think that this application could be used as a model for future programs, right? Because ultimately, as we transition more to clean energy systems, there'll be legacy fossil fuel assets that we can start retiring. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jose to talk a little bit more in depth about the specific programs that are in the application.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jose Buendia with SCE, and I'll go over the programs that we are proposing in our application. We're proposing 3 programs. The primary program is Be Ready Home. We have a Be Ready Catalina that focuses on Catalina, and then a Be Business program that focuses on commercial business customers. So I'll jump into the programs, and between the programs offerings that we propose, we plan to incentivize about 250,000 heat pumps. That's both space and water. We plan on performing 65,000 electric panel upgrades to accommodate these new technologies. And how do we plan on doing that? Well, we plan on performing customer segmentation analysis to identify key spots within our service area that are ripe or have good opportunities for electrification to benefit from it. We plan on working with city leadership, CBOs, to engage the communities and create that message. While all customers within the SCE service area will be eligible to participate in the program, we plan on having dedicated or focused marketing engagement for equity communities, ESG communities. Sorry about that. So we do plan on heavily focusing on ESG communities that have high populations of lower income customers and have lower air quality conditions. Through this program, again, by leveraging community-based organizations and working with city leaderships, we plan on creating or providing the message in forms that cities are accustomed to, or customers are accustomed to receiving the message in forms and manners that they're accustomed to receiving their information. We plan on performing electrification readiness assessments, or what we are calling Be Ready assessments. And the idea behind the assessments is to really take an inventory of the equipment that customers have in their home, looking at their electric panel to see if they can accommodate electrification. Also looking at traditional energy efficiency measures to find ways that we can help reduce their base load through this process as well. We plan on partnering with programs that are available out there, whether it's the tech initiative that's currently offering incentives for space and water, whether it's our low-income ESSA program that specifically targets low-income customers. We want to be the hub for all the programs and be able to be that focal point for customers. The most difficult thing to do is to get our foot in the door into a customer's home and be able to provide them with an analysis of their home. So by doing so, we think we can bring on partners to be able to provide a wider breadth of services and benefits to customers. We'll plan and provide to customers a customized report for their home based on the findings that we found through the assessment. We'll perform a rate and bill analysis. We want to ensure that customers who do electrify do in fact reduce their energy bills. Right? Josh kind of teed this up a little bit, but while potentially their winter bills could go up a little bit, their summer bills would come down, so that overall operating bills would go down for participating customers. So again, we want to be open and front right, and we want to be able to provide these assessments to customers so that they can make an informed decision. For those customers that we identify to be good candidates for electrification, we'll offer incentives for both space and water heat pumps. So that's a heat pump water heater and a heat pump HVAC unit. Up to $1,500 for a heat pump water heater for customers in ESJ communities, and about $1,000 for customers in non-ESJ communities. Again, these incentives could be stacked and layered with some of the programs out there. Like SCHIP is going to launch a heat pump water heater incentive here in the next year. That could be stacked. It could be stacked with the existing tech initiative incentives to provide more meaningful incentives for and motivation for customers to participate. For those customers that are low income, we hope that the incentives can be stacked sufficiently enough where it could result in a no-cost installation for customers. For customers who need electric infrastructure upgrades, say they have a 100-amp panel, need to go to a 200-amp panel to be able to accommodate electrification. What we're proposing to do is offer no-cost electric panel upgrades for low-income customers and offer to cover half the cost for market rate customers. And in addition to that, let's say a customer wants to upgrade a heat pump water heater. We won't just run the line to the water heat area. We'll also run a line to where the furnace is at, so that at time of failure, they could opt to go for a heat pump. We'll run a line to their cooking area. If they have a laundry area with a gas clothes dryer, we'll run a line there. So we really want to future-proof the home. We also want to size the panel accordingly so that customers can accommodate solar down the road. They can accommodate battery backup or purchase an EV vehicle, and with little cost, be able to add the charging port for that vehicle. So we're really trying to be very thoughtful about how we do this, and to reiterate Josh's point earlier, we want to future-proof the home so that customers can accommodate additional end uses. And the real thought behind this is, one of the challenges that we have, and Josh teed up on the barriers, is, not having the appropriate electric infrastructure makes it very difficult for customers to electrify at point of failure. If your water heater fails and you need hot water, it's difficult to wait to have the electric panel upgraded and plan and coordinate to get the water heater. You're likely going to go for what's in the truck. And today, contractors, what they have in their truck is another gas tank water heater. They have a tankless gas water heater. So we really want to be thoughtful in this so that at point of failure, customers have the option to electrify to a cleaner, non-combustion piece of equipment. On the other side of that, we're also going to cover the utility side expenses for like service line upgrades and line extensions that may be a result of these type of upgrades. For our Catalina customers, as you may know, SCE is the gas and water provider for Catalina. Those customers are challenged because of proximity. There aren't a remote island, so as such, we have a dedicated program that we developed for them. Some of the things that we take for granted is we can go online tonight, order a piece of equipment through a big box retailer, and have it delivered in a few days, all for one cost. Customers on Catalina Island have to procure the equipment, have it shipped to the port of San Pedro. They have to coordinate with the port to get it shipped to Catalina. They have to arrange to get it picked up by the local mover and delivered to their home. Then they have to coordinate for the installer in a lot of cases that come from the island. So, as you can see, there's a lot of steps to that and a lot of costs that go into that. So what customers opt to do is to repair indefinitely. So they have a lot of older appliances, and because, again, the logistics and the proximity issues that they have to address, it makes it much more difficult. So what we're looking to do is to partner with distributors, manufacturers, big box retailers, and be able to help get equipment on the island, stage it and store it in preparation for installation. So our Be Ready Catalina program will do that. We're also going to offer incentives for customers to not only electrify their space and water heating, we're also going to offer incentives for induction cooking appliance and for electric clothes dryers, really to encourage customers to take advantage of that opportunity. And by being able to work through some of the logistics and help some of the, again, manufacturers, big box retailers, or distributors to get product on that, we hope that we can encourage other programs that are either energy efficiency based, that are constrained by cost effectiveness requirements, or any other program to bring additional equipment on the island and really help customers become much more efficient on Catalina Island. We have another program that we again include in our application. That's the B business, and what we're really offering there is HVAC heat pump equipment. A lot of the businesses that we have rooftop units, and rooftop units make it easy to switch from a mixed fuel system to a heat pump, all electric heat pump. There's technical assistance that contractors need to make sure that the change out is correct, that they're sizing it correctly. There's also some lack of awareness on the customer side. They want to know what their bill's going to look like. So, we're offering technical assistance and design assistance to help both the installation contractors and also help customers get a better view of what the installations will look like for them, what their bills will look like in the future, and so on. And again, the commercial or the D program could be leveraged with other programs. Based on how we plan to market the program, again, I indicated working with city leadership and community-based organizations. So we think these are good targets in regards to the business, because a lot of those small business owners live in those same communities. And by doing a community-based approach, we hope to be able to engage many customers through this process. Again, the program will be available to customers across our service area, but we want to make sure that we help especially those most underserved customers and get them through the electrification transition before their gas bills increase and they're at a disadvantage. So we want to make sure we definitely don't leave them behind. I'll take a quick pause there and see if there's any questions, or we can move on, Josh.
Jose, Ross asked about, he said he just replaced his HVAC furnace. Can he still get the incentive?
So the program is not set to launch till 2024. I guess I missed mentioning that. It'll run basically for 24, 27, depending on when we get CPUC approval. But if you purchase an HVAC heat pump last year, depending on where you live, you may be eligible for the AQMD incentive of $1,500 per unit. So I would look into that, and I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat if that's helpful.
Hey, Josh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Last slide. So we were able to connect with a number of stakeholders, CBOs, contractors, labor unions, all kinds of different stakeholders before we filed the application. Thank you, Stuart and Richard, for being part of that process. So we did incorporate feedback from our community partners. We established, the floor for the ESJ community. We got a specific carve out for that. So 40% for the infrastructure upgrades and 1/3 for the appliance incentives. We did get a lot of different feedback on the definition for vulnerable communities. So we ended up going with the state definition for ESJ, which is different than some of the programs we've done in the past, which have focused on the state definition for disadvantaged communities. And the reason that's significant is DAC can sometimes leave out low-income communities that are not in the LA metro because they don't have the same air quality issues. So like, if you go like Ventura County, they have low-income communities, but they don't have the same air quality issues that we have here in San Gabriel Valley. And so we went with ESJ to be a little bit more inclusive. And then also the scale of the program. We got a lot of feedback, particularly from environmental and ESG groups about, we want more, we want more, we want faster. We can't control the calendar at the CPUC, but we can control the size of the ask. So we went with the number that you see on the screen. Another thing that we incorporated was some in the application testimony is some language around how this program could be utilized to retire gas infrastructure. Specifically the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility. Obviously, this isn't going to be enough to close that facility, but it's definitely a good start and a potential model for future programs where we could target gas end uses to reduce the throughput on the gas system so we can retire some of this fossil fuel legacy infrastructure. So we submitted our application in December. We're looking to coordinate with our supporters at one of the voting meetings at the CPUC next month. And then, the regulatory timeline, we are asking for a decision from the Public Utilities Commission by the end of 2023. So that way we can start offering incentives sometime in 2024. All of this is very tentative. So this is contingent on the CPUC sticking with the timeline that we've asked them for. So this is why we're reaching out to partners like Sustainable Claremont. It's one thing for us to make this ask. It's another thing when we have the support of the community, because there's a few different things that we need to convey to the CPUC. One, this application is a little unique in that we weren't asked to provide it. So typically the utilities don't initiate things like this. They're either ordered by the Public Utilities Commission, or there's some type of a legislative vehicle. The legislature will pass a bill and tell the utilities to do X, Y, and Z. We initiated this on our own based, we looked at the data and we're like, hey, California, we're not doing enough. And so that's a little unique. And so that's a hurdle. We also want to keep this as a standalone application. There's definitely some pressure from some of our detractors to put this in the energy efficiency proceeding. And that's not desirable for a number of reasons. Energy efficiency has just a lot of loopholes and a lot of bureaucracy that we have to jump through. We really see this not as an energy efficiency program, but as a decarbonization program. And so we really kind of have been trying to draw parallels to our charge-ready electric vehicle programs, both our light duty and our medium/heavy duty programs. So that's their message that we're trying to convey to the Public Utilities Commission. Ultimately, we want to get this through in a timely manner and get incentives out to customers so we can start heat pumps in people's homes and businesses. So with that, Jose and I are happy to take any questions anybody might have.
While we're waiting for some people to raise their hands or to put their questions.
It's your turn to be on.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm showing
you're
me.
broken.
Okay. Sorry if I'm choppy. Yeah, I was just gonna, while we're waiting for some people to raise their hands or just unmute themselves to ask questions or put them in the chat box. I was just wondering if we could circle back to the home energy audit that you discussed in one of the early slides. And could you speak to, what is involved in the home energy audit? Is that going to be done by SCE employees? Is it going to be contracted out? Is it going to be comprehensive or just looking at HVAC? What is the scope of that, and who is going to be doing that?
So we plan to have a solicitation for a third-party implementer that would perform the energy assessments, and they would bring in the assessors to do that work. They would manage the electricians to do the electric panel upgrades. They'll manage installation contractors for the various incentives for the heat pumps and space and water. So the idea is that they'll go in and do a standard energy efficiency audit with a twist, right? Looking at the electric panel and looking specifically at the appliances for replacement with electric equivalents. We hope that through the program, we can have partnerships with different programs that are out there in the market. I'll throw one out, for example, like DAX-Hash. DAX-Hash offers no-cost solar panels for low-income customers. But what they don't do is offer electric panel upgrades. So if a customer is a good candidate, but they don't have the right electric panel, they'll walk away from that customer. So this would be a good example where our program could facilitate them, addressing some of the customers that historically they've walked away from. We could partner again with our low-income MESA program. We could partner with AQMD's Clean Air Furnace so that we can look at specific things as it would be required. But we've seen programs of the past that will go into a home, look at different areas, and give customer a list of 10 different programs that they may be eligible for, and say, have at it, give them a call and see if you qualify, right? We hope that our program is different and that we can enter into agreements or MOUs with the different programs so that while we're there, we can onboard the customer to those other programs so that they can see the benefit and realize the benefits of all the different opportunities that may be available to them.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then I see a question here in the chat box from Richard Haskell saying most low-income families are renters. How is ownership of the new appliances going to be handled? Landlord, renter, how is that going to pan out?
So the two end uses that we're targeting are space and water, and those are owned by the landlord. The electric panel is part of the building, owned by the landlord. So we would definitely want to make it enticing for a property owner to participate, right? There's qualifications on the renter basis, but based off of that, a property owner could have some real benefit to their home or building that they own. They're responsible to ensure that those pieces of equipment are operating, right? So if they're going to fail, they're at close to end of life, they can participate in the program and take advantage of these incentives and get it to a low or no cost, or they can opt not participate, and when it does fail, they'll be on the hook to pay for the full replacement, right? The other thing is by allowing us to upgrade the electric panel, we're upgrading their building, right? So now it has more value and provide them more benefit down the road. We would certainly do envision something very similar. So we have the San Joaquin Valley pilot that targets low income. We have a low-income ESSA electrification pilot that will launch mid-year. What the CPUC has come back and has asked us to perform tenant owner agreements, execute owner agreements with in these situations that the property owner has agreed not to increase the renters the rent for a period of, I think it's 3 to 5 years for a certain percentage, right? It's like 3.5 or something like that. So it should fit well with the needs of a property owner. We haven't had any real feedback or negative feedback from San Joaquin Valley where we've been using it more extensively. So again, we hope that we've created a win-win scenario so that property owners are apt to participate, want to participate, and there's also a benefit for the renter where they don't have to be worried about being pushed out or out of their home because of increased rents.
Okay, great. And I see a big thumbs up from Dick. I think he's satisfied with that. And then I have, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, I have a question that was sent to me directly, but I think everybody would probably want to hear the answer. So it says, so you are asking the CPUC to raise our energy bills so you can send it back to us through incentive and education, correct? And so yes, at a very simple level, that's exactly what we're doing. Anytime we submit an application that has an impact on customer bills, it's essentially what we're doing, collecting revenue from the customers so that way we can provide additional services. I do want to emphasize that for this application, and really for all of our applications, we do have an eye towards affordability because we recognize that in order for, in the long run, for customers to have an economic incentive to transition to these clean energy technologies, the cost of electricity has to remain affordable, right? Because that's going to be our main fuel for a lot of clean technologies, whether it's electric vehicles or heat pumps. And so we want to keep electricity rates reasonable. And so we've done some, we think, are innovative things with this application. So usually things like appliance rebates would just go into O&M for the life of the program. So you'd see this big kind of sharp spike during the life of the program. We're looking to rate base those. So basically, it would basically like financing it, over multiple decades to stretch out that payment. So that way the impact on rates in those front years isn't as high. And then also to want to emphasize that the increase in demand will put downward pressure on electricity rates. So in the long run, we think within a couple of years of the program being live, the downward pressure will cancel out the upward pressure. So in a sense, this application will pay for itself over its lifetime.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification, Josh, for jumping in with that. I have a sort of a very basic, kind of back to basics question. Josh or Jose, can one of you just talk very briefly about what is a heat pump for people who may not be in the know? Like, what is that technology? And I feel like it's the worst branded product in the world. Like the name, I don't know. It's just, I think a lot of people still don't know what they are. And so it's not even on their radar when they're thinking about upgrading their home to be a more efficient, more electrified home. So if you could just talk to that really quick, that'd be great.
Jose, do you want to take a crack at that one? Or?
So I can do that. And yeah, and you're right. It's just, heat pump, people are really unaware, but everybody has one in their home. Everyone has a heat pump in their home today. It's the refrigerator, right? The refrigerator is a heat pump. And what it's doing is actually taking hot air out of the refrigerated area and replacing it with cooler air, right? It's doing an exchange. So that's basically what a heat pump does. It takes ambient air and it'll convert it, or with the changing valve, if it's cold outside, it'll take the cold air and convert it to into warm air inside your home, so you have the heat. If it's a hot day outside, they'll take that hot air and convert it into cool air so that your home is cooler. So the one vast difference that people will experience with a heat pump HVAC system is that you typically can't go into the vent and feel that cool burst of air on a hot day. It's going to be a more gradual cooler air, but it'll keep the home much more comfortable. For example, in my home office, I have a vent right over me. So when the system kicks in, the convection kicks in, I'll get a nice gust of cold air, and it's not very comfortable, right? So some people, especially when they're cleaning their home, they may want to feel that, but that's one of the main differences. And I think that's why education will be a big piece, so that customers understand some of these differences. We're not tackling induction cooking appliances at a wide level other than on Catalina, but there's an education component that goes to that, because cooking on an induction cooktop is much different than a gas appliance. I purchased a induction cooktop for my mom last year, and it took her a little while to get used to it, but now she knows what her settings are, she's comfortable with it, and for me, I think she's safer with it for a variety of reasons. But education is going to be definitely a big component of this.
Great.
The other benefit, I apologize, the other benefit to this is they're controllable. So heat pump water heater, customers want to be able to go to their faucet, turn it on, have hot water. They want to go take a shower and have hot water. They don't care if the water's being heated in the middle of the night, where peak demand load is and rates are more affordable. As long as that when they go, they can turn on their hot water. So I think that's one of the major advantages that heat pumps have, especially on the water heating side, is that you can heat the water overnight when peak demand is lower, and it holds the water temperature very, very well, that you can cruise through the times when you need it. You can program them very similar to HVAC with a programmable thermostat, so that they operate as you need it. They can be responsive to our grid needs as necessary if we have smart controls established two-way communication. And also there's a lot of opportunities with heat pump technologies and electric technologies that are not available with your traditional gas appliances.
Okay, that's great. And then three questions just came in, and I think they're all pretty darn similar. So I'm going to try to connect all the dots here. So the first from Ross, are there heat pump water heaters that fit into a short space, 3 feet or so, that can be installed horizontally? And then the next question, what are the space requirements for efficient heat pumps? And then yet again, will the requirement of a large volume of space for a heat pump water heater be a problem for a low-income house? So how big are these things, and what's the range? What are you going to be using for the program, or what can we expect?
Yeah, so they're small as 40 gallon all the way up to 80 gallons. Some of the challenges with heat pumps is that there isn't a low boy replacement at this point, right? Sometimes there's small constrained areas, and unfortunately, a heat pump water heater is not going to work. Traditionally, they needed a lot more air to circulate in order for them to work, but there's a few new models that are on the market that require less space, so it's making them a little bit more amenable for those situations. There is, I want to say, an Italian or European model that we've seen that is actually an outdoor model that we're looking in to see if we can get our hands on one to test at our lab in Irwindale, and to see if that's something that could work here for us. But they're using this in production. Again, it escapes right now if it's an Italian model or if it's a European model. But they've been using heat pumps for a very long time. So anything we can do to bring those type of technologies over, that'd be fantastic. They're improving in terms of central water heating systems. 125 gallon units and bigger, that can serve multiple homes, like in small multifamily, which is in scope for our program. So there's opportunities, but yeah, we fully recognize that on the water heating side, there's going to be some opportunities where the technology is just not there, and customers may not, be good candidates, and we'll be honest and forthright with that. On the HVAC side, I think it's more mature. There's a wide range of technologies, whether they're ducted or ductless equipment. You have mini splits that use ducts that are super efficient. There's nice through wall models that are hitting the markets pretty hard. So on the HVAC side, I think there's less of a worry, but I'll be the first to recognize that there's some opportunities on the water heating side that might not be ready for the technology that's on in the market today.
And Jose, another potential benefit, especially of the ducted units, is especially in older communities, if you're adding in air conditioning where there wasn't air conditioning previously, with the ductless ones, you don't have to go in and do all that duct work, correct?
Yeah. Well, don't get me started with that. I think one of the biggest opportunities that we have, and I'll paint a picture for you. Once you paint it in your own head, you're not going to be able to see it. So as you guys are driving down, different neighborhoods through your regular commutes, you see all these homes that have a room AC hanging out the window, and it's super efficiently insulated with cardboard, some plexiglass, plywood, right? So half that cool air is getting back out that same window. When they turn on their wall furniture, that's typically what they have. That warm air is also seeping out through those windows. So a ductless mini split would be a perfect solution, right? You could heat and cool a home, quite efficiently. Allow the customer to close that window and improve the envelope significantly just by doing that, and through the installation of a ductless mini split. So I think that's some low-hanging fruit for us to tackle as we launch these programs.
Okay, great. I'm going to pause for a second here to see if anyone has any questions. Again, I'm looking and I make sure I don't see any hands up. Richard, do you have any follow-ups? I don't see any hands up there.
Now, maybe this is a good time to do. I mean, I just think that I've heard this presentation now a number of times, and I just think this is. I understand that it's really unique in the sense that it's generated without an invitation, but I just don't see how it can fail. It's hitting so many needs head on that I just don't see how the CPUC could look the other way. I mean, thank you guys for really putting this together. It's impressive.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
All right, and I got another question here from Ross Pringle, sort of about the nuts and bolts of it. He asks, if the heat pump water heater is in a heated space, are you going to have to use the HVAC to add heat back to the home after the water heater removes it? What is the efficiency?
Yeah, not necessarily. There's different techniques you can use depending on the installation scenario, but we've seen them where they get ducted back into the attic, and actually helps keep the home cooler. So there's different things that you can do, but I mean, just by having it inside your home doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to crank up your heater to offset for it.
All right, and I see that Freeman has his hand up. Freeman, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you, Freeman.
Oh, I was just wondering, if time permits, could you comment on the relative benefits of a bank of batteries as opposed to time of use pricing for solar panels?
So the benefits of storage versus TOU pricing?
Yes. I have been advised that it makes more sense to just use time of use pricing where excess energy goes back into the system rather than purchasing a bank of batteries. For solar panels where you have excess energy.
We have another question here about an increase for solar power specifically. So I think, so are you asking about the proposed changes to export compensation for solar?
So suppose I install solar panels and I have excess energy at times. There's the option of selling it in the battery or selling it back through pricing and using it that way. I've been advised that it makes more sense to sell it back to SCE rather than buy batteries. And I wondered if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, so what you're describing actually is one of the main reasons why we need to reform them. So I also see Brian has a similar question asking about the proposed changes to solar compensation. So currently there's a separate proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission that is reevaluating how we compensate solar customers. And there's two main motivating factors. One is equity and one is environmental. So don't get me wrong, we're not anti-solar. We're not trying to shame people that have installed solar. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are today if not for those early adopters. But NEM is definitely, in our opinion, a program that has outlived its useful life. So NEM was created back in 1995 to kickstart an industry that didn't exist. Now we have 1.3 million homes and businesses that have solar. And so NEM has kind of become a little bit of a victim of its own success. And so we have so much solar in the middle of the day now that a lot of it's actually going to waste. But we're still compensating solar customers at a very, very high rate. It's important to remember that subsidy, the NEM subsidy, doesn't come from shareholders. It comes from other customers. It comes from people who don't have solar. And so when we look at the equity side, we have this large subsidy that's being paid for by non-solar customers who tend to be lower income, renters, people of color. And then you have the environmental side, which is incremental standalone solar isn't really contributing to GHG reductions the way that it was 5-10 years ago when we had a lot more fossil fuels on the system. So in order to get incremental GHG reductions, we really need to shift that solar to later in the afternoon, which is where the storage piece comes in. Unfortunately, the current NEM tariff is not really designed for storage. It's not really good at incentivizing customers to install storage. So you probably, it sounds like you spoke to a solar installer and basically said, even though you get a lower export rate on time of use, it still results in a higher ROI versus if you install batteries. And so that's really the changes that the Public Utilities Commission is trying to balance. So this proceeding has been going on since August of 2020. There's a lot of different parties that have been participating, both on the reform side as well as opposed to the reform side. And so, the proposed decision that they're looking at is trying to balance all these competing interests, right? We have, a desire to fix this equity issue. We want to, reduce the negative impact of the NEM subsidy on non-participating customers who tend to be lower income. We want to, resume seeing incremental GHG reductions. We want to incentivize customers to install these clean energy technologies. We want to, keep those clean energy jobs. And so that's what, the proposed decision is attempting to strike a very delicate balance between all of those different things. I think it's important to remember that with the proposed decision, customers are still saving money. Out of necessity, we have to lower the incentive. And so, customers aren't going to save as much money as they have historically, but it's still going to be significant net positive for customers to go solar. Also, the proposed decision makes a couple different changes that are really intended to make it much more advantageous to add storage. So if this proposed decision gets passed, you'll see a shift. Right now, we have a very, very small minority of new solar systems are being installed with batteries. If the proposed decision gets passed, I think you'll see that flip. You'll see almost all of new solar be installed with batteries, which is really what we need, whether it's environmental or reliability benefits. Really that critical period for the grid, as well as decarbonization. I mean, the time of day when pretty much most of the pollution is produced is between 4 and 9 p.m. in the afternoon. And that's exactly when solar starts to level off. And really, if you look at the graphs from the CAISO, it's like a roller coaster. It just goes in nosedives, starting right at 4 o'clock. So that's the Cliff Notes version of what's going on with solar.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, if you have solar about to get an increase, what incentives good to go to this program tonight? I did this because it was the right things to do. So, Brian, it's important to remember that the changes in the proposed decision apply to mostly to new customers. So the proposed decision would not take effect until 6 months after it's voted. So if you already have solar, you would be on what we call NEM, or if you've gotten solar recently between July 1st, 2017 and 6 months after the proposed decision, so mid 2022, you will be on what we call NEM 2.0. And the proposed decision would, existing solar customers would not transition to the new, what we're calling net billing tariff until 15 years. So you would have 15 years on either NEM 1.0 or 2.0, whichever one you're on. And really that depends, did you install before or after July 1st, 2017? Once you reach 15 years, then you would go on to the new, what some other people are calling it NEM 3.0, but the official name is net billing. So 15 years.
Is that,
go ahead.
sorry, when is that decision being made? Is it the end of the month, right?
Possibly. So we don't know for sure. The soonest that the CPUC could vote on it would be January 27th. But again, like every other proceeding, they go at their own schedule. So they could push to February. Like, who knows? I think everybody that's involved is really anxious for it just to wrap up. Like, we just want it to
right. I suspect it's something we could have a dialogue on, just on the topic of NEM.
Yeah.
I see another final question for you. Thank you guys for staying and answering so much. It's from Ross. What kind of incentives will there be for adding battery to storage?
So there currently is a program called SCHIP, which Jose talked a little bit about. So it's the self-generation incentive program. Those incentives do go pretty quickly. The state, both the CPUC and the governor through his budget, they'll throw money back in there. So definitely check back. But then another thing, as part of the proposed decision, the CPUC proposed decision would provide a pool of at least $600 million for low-income customers to install both solar and storage. It would also provide a separate pool of money for existing non-low-income customers to add storage as sort of a carrot to get them to transition over to the net billing program sooner. So it would provide about $3,500, which is about a third of the cost of adding storage. So it's a carrot. So if you basically, if you're an existing, if this passes, it's all, we don't know. None of us have a crystal ball. If you do, let me know the lottery numbers. But if the proposed decision passes, there will be a pool of money for existing NEM 1 and NEM 2 customers to switch over to the net billing tariff. And in exchange, the CPUC will give you $3,500 towards your energy storage.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We're already past 8 o'clock here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Josh, Jose, thank you both so much for coming tonight and telling us about this exciting program. And we'll be on pins and needles waiting to hear the result of this. If there's ever any updates to what's going on, please feel free to come back and let us know what's going on. If anyone has any questions that we didn't get to, I try to monitor those comments, but I sometimes miss some. Please feel free to email me, Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, @sustainableclaremont.org, and I'll pass those along to Josh and Jose. So thank you all again, and hope everyone has a fantastic night. All righty. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye.